Love to heal a nation is the greatest power. A wind of destruction is blowing over this land. And now the earth is trembling with man's oppression of man. Now the time comes to sit down and rediscover what's life. Show the world the true meaning of real love, power, not strife. Bring down the power of love, I say. The power of love, I say, is the greatest power. Stop hell and damnation. Bring down the power. Love to heal a nation. Put our hands on the fire and cleanse the wicked right now. Right now. All of them who does worship, greed and vanity must bow. Unity is the banner, so come together. I say, and this love is for freedom, it's growing stronger each day. Bring down the power. Bring down the power of love, I say. The power of love, I say, is the greatest power. Stop hell and damnation. Bring down the power. Love to heal a nation. So rejoice in a rhythm of celebration. Come on. Lift your voice with a feeling of satisfaction as one. And let we move with a purpose, all freedom lovers. Hold tight. Stepping out of the darkness with one direction inside. Bring down the power of love, I say. The power of love, I say, is the greatest power. Stop hell and damnation. Bring down the power. Love to heal a nation. Bring down the power. Bring down the power of love, I say. Bring down the power. The power of love, I say. Bring down the power. Stop hell and damnation. Bring down the power.
Ashe, welcome. Hotep, Ekaro, Ashe, and welcome to all. This is the Anu Asafo show, where Pan-Africanism meets African traditional spirituality with your hosts, Brother Ifa Wumi Oshundeli and me, Brother Wole Mango Ifa. And this week we are pleased to have another fantastic show lined up for you all. But first, as always, here is the African Players with Brother Ifa Wumi Oshundeli.
Thank you so much, Brother Wale Ifa. We will remember the humanity, the glory, and suffering of our ancestors and honor the struggle of our fathers. We will strive to bring new value and new life to our people. We will have peace and harmony among us. We will be loving, sharing, and creative. We will work, study, and listen so we may learn so we may teach. We will cultivate self-reliance. We will struggle to resurrect and unify our homeland. We will raise many children for our nation. We will have discipline, patience, devotion, and courage. We will live as models to provide new direction for our people. We will be free and self-determining. We are African people. We will win. We will win. We will win.
Ashe, Ashe, Asheo, and Hotep. Adupueo, Brother Ifa Wumi, and thank you all for your attendance in this Enlightenment and Transformation Network show today. And it is a great honor to be here and to have you here again this week. This weekend, in addition to our regular current events remark section, we are happy to present the second part in the Asafo Cultural Spotlight series entitled The Black Panthers, Part 2, with Brother Brother Ifa Wumi Oshundeli. Last week, brother, you shared Part 1 with us, and it was quite enriching. We're looking forward to Part 2. How's it looking, brah?
Shay, Brother Wale, is looking great. Today we're going to honor those sisters in the struggle. We cannot, and it's kind of hard for anyone to ever do, to speak of the Panther organization and not cover the role that our women have played in the organization. So today, this is what I plan to do today, explore the role that the women played in the Black Panther Party.
Thank you so much for paying attention to that. So many times the sisters are overlooked in the struggle, and as we all know, those in the know, the sisters are the backbone to our struggle. They're the backbone to our community.
Yes, they are, brother.
Well, today is Ashan Ifa Day in the tradition of our Yoruba brethren, the day of divining and getting words of wisdom and tradition from our ancestral oracles. And our special guest today is well-timed and well-positioned to help us honor this day appropriately. And I'm speaking about Brother James Weeks, the producer of the upcoming film Across the King's River, in which he documents his personal experience journeying back to the homeland and sharing his experience being counseled by the senior diviner in the Yoruba tradition, and that was the former Asheda of Ile-Ife, Baba Awo Babatunji Adeyafa, who has since evolved into the realm of the ancestors. May he never be forgotten, and may he also rest in peace. But first, in Pan-African current events, first off, we recently got a heads up from our Chief Jegna, Haru Yuya Asana Anu, about a particular case of a young missing child. And this young brother's name is Avante Aquendo. There is a $70,000 reward out, and the Chief Jegna wrote to us. He said, this young man has been missing for some time now. I live in the New York City area, and I can tell you that there are flyers up everywhere. And in alignment, he refers to a sister from our Infunde class, quote, in alignment with Sister Celeste Voso's post on superheroes recently, we could use some right now. This beautiful child has gone missing from his home. We don't know why. We don't know if he is lost, abducted, or rescued. In either event, we need to give energy to his well-being, stability, and anything more important that is happening today. So we want to say, we want to send out our energies in the recovery and the rescue of this young brother in the New York City area. Ashe, 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 oh.
Ashe.
Okay, and now on to the latest in the Renisha McBride case we spoke on last week. There has been movement in the case. The murderer of this young 19-year-old sister, 54-year-old Theodore Wafer, has been arrested and charged with second-degree murder for shooting Sister McBride dead and was arraigned in court last week. He is also facing charges of manslaughter and possession of a firearm used in a felony. Now, the 19-year-old Sister McBride, part of her face was blasted off on November 2nd on the porch of the killer after she was seeking help following a car crash about a half a mile away. And this is in the state of Michigan. Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy said, claiming, quote-unquote, self-defense was not warranted, as they believed he could not reasonably believe that his life was in imminent danger. So there's movement in the right direction. Bruh Fa, do you have any thoughts on that issue?
Oh, yes, I do. The latest is that the fact that this is what they do. They're putting in the press that this young lady had an alcohol level twice than a normal amount, trying to make it seem or put that thought into the minds of other people that she may have been erratic in some way to have caused this homeowner to fear. Well, if they're going to do that, has the homeowner who shot this woman, who killed this woman like this here, has he been tested for drugs? This has become an ongoing problem when our children are murdered and shot down in the street, especially by those with that white skin. I don't like the fact that I have a problem with black-on-black crime as well. However, for me to go and ring the doorbell of someone because I need help, because I am hurt, you blow my brains out. And I think Kim Worthy is doing a great job. I think she's doing an outstanding job as prosecutor to make sure she dot all the I's and cross all the T's.
Ashe. And that's an excellent point you brought up about his blood level should have been checked as well. And hopefully it was.
On drugs.
Hopefully it was. And also, last week we spoke about the Sapelo Island case. The latest update was the petition that had been started. And Brother Fa, can you tell us any update? You've been passing that petition around. You're an author of one of those petitions yourself. Anything that the audience should know to help them reach that petition?
Okay, for one is the petitions have been circulating with a great amount of speed, and I want to thank all of our radio listeners, my Facebook friends, everybody on social media who's been signing the petition. Also, although I can't believe it, a lot of people were not aware of the circumstances. That's why the petition is going around. However, we do have a court date now. We will be in court on December 11th and the 12th in McIntosh County, Georgia.
Excellent. And, of course, we're wishing you all the best. We're sending out energy to help in that case, and hopefully we're all doing that. Now, we are getting ready to head to our first break, but before we do, we want to, give you a chance as usual to get your heads on straight and get ready and get prepared to learn more about the power of this documentary that's being produced by the brother sitting in the Anu Asafo studios right now. And that documentary is called Across the King's River. And it is a powerful documentary. I've seen the clip, and there's clips around. It's on YouTube, and we encourage you to check that out. Brother Ifa Wumi, I understand you are intimately familiar with this documentary, and in fact, we can call you a bit of a co-producer because you have lent your energy and other things to this case. Will you tell us a little bit about this ongoing documentary before we go to break?
Okay, yes. Brother Weeks have been trying to complete this project for a little over 2 years, I believe now. When I first heard about the project, I jumped up and down and everything. I was like, somebody finally telling stories. They're telling out the whole story in terms of our ancient traditional spirituality, all those traditions. And when I first saw the clip, I was like, all right, finally. You know, the scenery is just lush, green, beautiful. I'm sure most of our listeners, radio listeners, have seen the clipping. That's an excellent job. And not only did I donate once, but I ended up donating twice because I want to see the result of the story.
Ashe. That's fantastic, brother. And that's the spirit that we love to see in the community. Working together, supporting one another, and also doing a good job when we get the support of others. So we're going to get into all of that in just a moment on the other side of this. So Sister Omilade, please bring us home.
Please check out anu-bookstore.com for book releases from Anu Publishing, such as Grasping the Root of Divine Power, Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships, and Natural Hair for Young Women. At anu-bookstore.com, you'll find books on the ORISHA tradition, African religion, divination, cross-cultural relationships, and many more forthcoming titles. At anu-bookstore.com, you'll find works that serve your journey to evolution and high vibratory sustainment. The website is anu-bookstore.com. And now back to our segment.
Where Pan-Africanism, it's 16 minutes after the hour, and you're listening to the Anu Asafo Show, where Pan-Africanism meets African traditional spirituality, with your host, brothers Ifa Wumi Oshundeli and me, Brother Wole Mango Ifa. And sitting in the Anu Asafo studios this week is our special guest, Brother James Weeks, producer of Across the King's River. Brother James Weeks, welcome to Anu Asafo. Okay, we just want to make sure Brother Weeks is there and his mic is open. Brother James, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome to the Anu Asafo Show, brother.
Well, thank you so much for having me as a guest. It's an honor to be on your show.
It is a great gift to have you here. And speaking of gifts, this project that you're working on is inspiring a lot of people. You know that. You've been working on it for a while, and you have been getting some support from the community as well. But before we get into that, I want you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you've come to your current spiritual walk, brother.
Well, I am originally from the Caribbean. I'm from the St. Croix Virgin Islands, and I also have a background in journalism. And I would say early on in my career, I used to work for a newspaper back home, but I was always interested in things about Africa, things that have to do with antiquity. And over time, I became more familiar with African spirituality, and eventually I was called to do this work across the King's River. And the title of the film, Across the King's River, comes from a Yoruba proverb that basically says, if a king asks us to do something, we can't tell a king that we're not going to do it. The proverb really sounds like this. Isheoba koshemache obaranishe odobakun. Isheoba koshemache koshenko. A good friend of mine who is from Yoruba land, he taught me that proverb one day. Basically, in Yoruba language, an Oba is a king. And so what this proverb says, hey, a king, when a king tells someone to do something, the expectation of the king is that that project or whatever that king sent you on with that mission will get done. And the proverb goes on to say, Odobakun, and Odobakun means the river is full. When they say the river is full, it sort of implies that you could maybe drown in the process. It's a difficult job that you have to do. But then the proverb ends by reminding you that whatever the king has asked you to do must be done, no matter what sacrifice, no matter what challenge. And so it's a way of saying, when I heard that proverb, I always felt that maybe the king is like our soul, or the king is like the will of the ancestors, who is asking each and every one of us to follow through on what we feel called to do. And really and truly, no excuses are acceptable. Why? Because they're excuses. And so we have to be bold and follow through on what we feel called to do and how we feel called to serve others.
Ashe. Now, Brother James, I have connected with you on Facebook, and one of the things that you're doing to keep people updated on your progress is you have a newsletter for this project. And I noticed in the newsletter before last, you announced that you have been liberated from your corporate America career. Is that the current state of things, and will that mean that you will have more time to dedicate directly to the project?
That's correct. That is correct. I actually left in 2011, so that later is a bit dated, but that is correct. I am working full time on the film project, but I also do spiritual readings for others as well to guide them on their path. But that is correct. I no longer work for corporate America. I used to work there for 19 years. It paid the bills, but it came to a point where it wasn't fulfilling. It really wasn't what I was called to do at this stage of my life. And every one of us, we have to ask, is what we're doing our real calling? And if it's not, it may take care of you materially, but it will never fulfill you. And not only will it never fulfill you, it will never empower you. And until we do what we're called to do in life, we will never be fully empowered ourselves, and we won't have the power to empower other people. So the power to liberate others comes from doing our very best to walk our path, whatever that path is, and to stay on that path, even during the hard times when things are up or when things are down, despite the adversity, just to do your very best to stay dedicated to what you're called to do, no matter what.
Oh, Shay. And Brother Weeks, now few film producers are creating films which tell our stories from an African perspective. Now, are you aware that there is an audience for our stories? Our heroes, such as Nat Turner and Gullah Jack, Assata Shakur, Angela Davis, Joan Letto, the role of the African in the Spanish War, Black Wall Street, the Haitian fight for independence. And these stories can be told from an African perspective. My question to you is, what prevents these stories from coming to the big screen?
Well, it's a very good question. The thing is, it's not just our stories that are prevented from coming to the big screen. Even for a lot of independent filmmakers just across the board, it's also very, very difficult. It's difficult to get funding for films. And then even when you get funding for films, it's not always easy to get distribution. So it's not just our story, it's across the board. And then the other thing, too, is sometimes when some artists who want to do certain projects, they don't always get the full support of the community to bring their ideas to fruition. And that whole business of the big screen, whether it's a big screen or a small screen, it's also still a business, and they have to survive, And a case in point is this. At the moment, two friends of mine with colleagues, two filmmakers that I know, you may have heard of them, Kingdom, Daly, and Adafo. They did the documentary project, Ancestral Voices. Are you familiar with that project?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, right now they have a funding drive on Indiegogo to raise funds for a sequel to that film. They hope to raise $60,000. That's their goal. But the last time I checked, it was maybe they raised so far, 1,600, around that. But they have a fan base of over 30,000 people on Facebook. And, if everyone on their page donated $1 or more, well, they could get a lot closer to their funding goal. So my point in just mentioning this is, here's two other filmmakers out of the United Kingdom in this case. They're trying to do a project, but they're having difficulty even raising money from their own fan base, which is their own support group. And so to go back to your question about the big screens, to get to like the big screen, more people would have to support these types of films. And it's not always easy to get people to do by, flashy sneakers or whatever. They'll do whatever it is that they feel they have to do, but it's not always easy to get the support, so it's easier said than done many times.
Shay. And Brother Weeds, have you and other independent African film producers, have you ever considered attending the annual Cannes Film Festival to promote projects? As I understand, that's like the first step when you're trying to get a audience or investors for these projects.
No, it's not the first step, actually. But no, we there was just there have been some delays. I do have some investors who are interested in the project. There just have been some delays over the years, which is not unusual in this field. It's not unusual for there to be delays for one reason or another. It's quite usual, even for very, very established filmmakers. I remember reading some time ago that I think it's George Lucas, who did big film, Star Wars. He was trying to do a film about Red Tails, about the Tuskegee Airmen. Well, even for him, it took him like over 20 years, and he's a big person in the industry. So the whole thing is these types of projects, whether they're bigger or even smaller, they just take time to produce. And it goes back to this. This is why I talk so much about having faith and having dedication and remaining on path no matter what, because it requires this type of attitude to bring not only to life that you hope to bring, or to bring about social change, which is necessary. It takes that type of daily dedication.
Ashe. And that's totally true. And these projects can go on and on. I'm a novelist, and I've been writing on my project for longer than I wanted to say. But about the content of your project, you're speaking with the illustrious past Asheda Awo of Ile Ife, Babatunji Adeyafa. And I happen to have had the pleasure of meeting that Baba Awo some 18 years ago, back in Bowling Green State University. He came. It was the first time a person who held that rank had left Nigeria, had traveled outside the country. And it was an Ngungun festival that was presented by my professor's husband. My professor, it was Lillian Ashcroft Eason at Bowling Green State University, now retired. And her husband was the late Baba Jisovi Eason, who was an Ngungun priest and Shango priest. And he set up this Ngungun festival, and we were blessed to have not only the Asheda Awo, but the assistant director of the Wande Abimbola Ifa Heritage Institute in Oyo, Professor Bade Ajawan. And I got my first reading in Ifa from the Asheda Awo, and the things he told me are still reverberating in my life today. And when I looked at your clip, and the Asheda was asked, what is the point that you would like to be remembered for? He said that he would like to be remembered for the quality of work I'm paraphrasing, of course, the quality of work and the sincerity and honesty of the work that he did. And it really touched home to me. How was it? How was it interviewing and having a man of such distinction as the subject of your documentary? When, as you say in the clip, so many people from Brazil and Europe and the Americas, they all come to see him. That was a great coup. How did that come about? I know you're saving some for the film, but
Well, first I want to say, I had no idea that you actually met him, and so he was one of my mentors. I had many mentors, so he was one of them, and he was the person that initiated me into IFA. So, but he's there'll be other elders that we speak to in the film, So I wouldn't say it revolves only around him. He's one of several people that influenced the project, and whose spirit still guides the project in many ways. But the last time I saw him was in 2008, and what was it like? Well, like you said, you made a reference of the reading he did for you. I will never forget the first reading he did for me. When you come to a reading with someone like him, you have to be prepared to face, difficult truths, or you have to be prepared to change in some ways, or you have to be prepared for the reality of what is coming down in the future. And sometimes people say they're interested in growing spiritually, but they don't want to. They're not really prepared. They're not really prepared to hear the truth. So I really relate to what you said about you being stirred in some ways by the first reading that he did for you, because in many ways I am still stirred by the first reading he did for me as well.
Oh, Shay. Now, Brother Weeks, in my honest opinion, the Oprah Winfreys, the Tyler Perrys, the Will Smiths, Bill Cosby, Spike Lees, and yes, the James Weeks should be able to collaborate economically to get funding with projects, especially if there's an audience for the material. There should be unity on the projects which uplifts the black family, tell our stories politically and spiritually. How can we in the diaspora, throughout the diaspora, expect unity of like minds when those of us who possess the economic power to complete films and other projects for our own education and entertainment, when we cannot work together?
Well, I would say, and again, I can't speak for the work other people are called to do. I know Oprah has made, a lot of contributions to film that she believed in. So she has made significant contributions, in my opinion. And I guess Tyler Perry, in his own way, is making his contribution. I would say there are room for a wide variety of films. There's room for films that are spiritual. There's room for films that are political. As human beings, we have a wide variety of needs. So I think that our experience can be documented and shared in so many ways. But back to your point, there just hasn't been enough films about the African side, or especially the African spiritual side. Yes, there's films about the African Christians or Christianity who touched, how that has shaped our lives here in the diaspora. But there hasn't been any films, at least not on a major level, about our traditions, and we hope to do that with this film. But getting back as to what you were saying about our prominent celebrities, in some cases not doing enough, I feel that we have to look to ourselves and what we can do, and not so much look at, well, what are they not doing? We need to look to ourselves and say, what can we do? And just keep the focus on us.
Okay, I agree with you, but keeping the focus on it and trying to do something, because I have with several other projects that many of the independents are trying to do and bring to our community. However, I feel that those filmmakers and those who are in the business of who can turn a few keys in Hollywood, owe it to those filmmakers who are independent coming up behind them to support their project in terms of they can go and write just one signature for X amount of dollars to complete a project. And what I was alluding to is a collaboration collectively to complete some projects. I feel that you from what I've seen thus far of your clip, that alone is enough for Oprah to plot her checkbook, or Tyler Perry, or Will Smith, Bill Cosby, the rest of them who have actually made inroads into producing films, just to complete the film.
I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. And to you, I would say it will come. It will come, and that's one of the lessons that I learned. And when I say it's one of the lessons that I learned so far in this journey, I would say it's a lesson that I continue to learn. And one of the lessons is that there is a thing called divine timing. When certain things come to fruition, and sometimes when we're because we're human beings, we have it in our heads. Well, such and such should happen at this time, and we think this is the time it should happen because X, Y, Z. But our ancestors and the spirit forces that we call the ORISHAs, they have their own timeline, And I remember once Omar Sosa, who has agreed to do the musical composition for this film, once he said, the ancestors have the last word. And so that's what I would say. The ancestors have the last word. And what I would say is we know that the funding will come, and that it's on the way. We know that. And so we just have to wait until that time is right, not just for this project, but for all of the projects, like the novel that you say you're working on, for everything that we wish to do in our life, for all of the change that we would like to see, for the prayers that we have out there. We just have to just be diligent and allow for the divine to work through us and with us.
Sounds good. Baba, I should call you Baba instead of brother because I wasn't aware of your level of initiation.
Either one is fine, brother. Too, I am a brother to many people, so that's you're still on track.
Ashe. Let's talk about the incredible potential of this project. I'm one who I spent a lot of time just searching around the internet, and especially on YouTube, and you see a lot of videos on Ifa in particular, but most of them are in the Yoruba language. But other than the UN's clip, this one clip by, I should know his name, I knew I was going to bring that up, but what is refreshingly new and different about your project from the clip I saw was first the excellent quality of the soundtrack, of the visual images, and the narration. Everything the production is excellent, the production quality, but the potential of the impact of it, because there's very little information on Ifa in English. And we're in the second decade of the 21st century, and we kind of would imagine that there would be more, because there's so many people running around the country proclaiming Ifa and proclaiming being initiated and calling themselves Babalawos and all this, and we need more. So I think that the potential of your project, once it hits, is incredible. I'm sure you know this already, but I'm not sure how to put this into a question. But how does that knowledge inspire you, or there must be a little frustration, because as Brother Ifa Wumi was talking to you about getting economic funding, there's a process. But of the great potential that is involved with this project once it comes out. Let me ask you this. Is there a possible consideration of more clips being released before the film is released, or a longer clip? Because that 3-minute clip is just enthralling. Yes.
Yes, and we'll be doing that next year. Early next year, as we move forward, we will be sharing more and more teasers and other things. And we will put more weight behind our marketing and outreach programs. But back to your question, I feel that after this film is out, it will open the door for a lot of other films, or it would help to open the door for not just other films, but other types of art to really flourish, to come forward, And so in that way, it inspires me, it inspires me. And it's not a film about me. It's a film about an idea. It's a film about the will of the ancestors and the determination of the ancestors, the wisdom of the ancestors. And that's what the film is about. I never really wanted to make a film that people would just say oh, that's an amazing film. Oh, look at that beautiful film. I wanted to create a film that would inspire people to walk closer to their own purpose, whatever that purpose is, so that when people experience the film, they will get the courage and the conviction to go out there and fight for what they want, or create what it is that they feel called to do. So it's a film that it goes beyond a film then. It's more of a way of life, a film that's also a way of life in itself.
Ashe. But Brother Weeks, what are your plans for the future in film?
Well, this is we may do a series, we may do a sequel to after the first one comes out. We may do a whole series, but it won't be the first and only film because, like you said, there's so many stories in our community that need to be told. There's so many, we have so many rich stories, and not just stories of the past, but when inside each and every one of us, there's a story that's important. And so I feel like your story is important, and if we find a way to, if we find and discover the power within our own story, we can do a whole lot for other people. We can help to heal other people. A good friend of mine who's a singer, her name is Indra. She told me once when I was interviewing her, just because we're not sick doesn't mean that we don't need to be healed. Just because we may not feel in physical pain, it doesn't mean we're not in need of healing. And so I would say every one of us in some way is in need of healing, deep healing. Why? Because all of us in some way have been hurt. In some way, some have been hurt in a very, very harsh, ugly, nasty way. Some are hurt. I would put it this way: some are hurting more than other people, and some people are not even aware that they've been hurt. Well, all of us who walk this earth in some way is in need of healing, because in some way, all of us have been hurt. In some way, all of us, we need to find our way back home, spiritually.
Ashe, and it's 16 minutes before the hour, and you're sitting with the Anu Asafo Show, where Pan-Africanism meets African traditional spirituality with your host, Brothers Ifa Wumi Oshundeli, and me, Brother Wole Mango Ifa. And our special guest right now in the Anu Asafo studios is Baba James Weeks, the producer of the film Across the King's River. And Baba Weeks, would you give the audience your contact information at this point?
Oh, definitely. You can reach me at www.acrossthekingsriver.com, or you can, my phone number, for any reason you need to reach out to me, is 510-388-5500. Again, that's acrossthekingsriver.com, 510-388-5500.
Shay, that's fantastic. Speaking on what Brother Ifawumi just asked you about, and your answer to it about the possibility of a series, might somewhere down the line, and how far do you think we are away from a documentary on Ifa in the United States?
I think that will come. I think that will come. I think I know earlier this year, I know NPR just did a radio program on a small radio segment. I don't know if you heard it on Ifa in the United States in the African American community. But Ifa, as I'm sure you know, is one of the fastest growing indigenous spiritual systems in the world. I remember a couple of years ago when I had a chance to talk to Professor Wande Abimbola. He told me that it's literally spreading like wildfire. And when you think about, for me anyway, when you think about how these traditions have been repressed for centuries and centuries, and people have been told or brainwashed to believe that these systems have no value and that it's paganism or whatever it is they want to call it. And when you look at how rapidly they're growing across the world, for me, it blows me away. It just makes me feel like this must be the will of the ancestors, and it's just spreading all over the world.
Ashe. And that's an interesting thing, because here in the United States, and I'm sure in other places, but not so much as in the United States, there is the whole hodgepodge of the different denominations and lineages of the Ifa tradition in one form or another. While we might, Brazil, have a majority in one system, and the same can be said for in the Latin American island nations. There's a particular type of tradition. Here in the United States, I run into people who come from the Lukumi tradition, come from the Kodamble tradition, the continental Ifa tradition from a variety of different lineages in Yoruba land, the Palo tradition, all that kind of thing. So we do have a unique thing going on here. And as you said, NPR touched on it and interviewed some people in a house in Seattle, Washington. And just a couple of weeks ago, we were blessed to have the Oluo of the Fashei Institute for the Study of Nature, Baba Ifa Bimi, was here, and Baba Ifa Bimi dropped quite a bit of information on this, and he talked about the uniqueness of his northwestern regional area. And of course, we know the traditions are very strong in the northeast and the southeast. And there are people in Phoenix and everywhere around. So that's going to be quite an undertaking. Some people have told me they believe that the future of Ifa, as we know it, is more in the West. How do you see that comment?
Well, I don't think it's. I wouldn't agree with that. But I understand what people mean by that. I wouldn't. I think there's some truth in it, though, and by that, say that the growth of Ifa in the West and in other parts of the world, because it's also spreading in the Far East as well. I've heard of people doing a Gungun festival in Japan recently, for example. So this rapid growth, I know, is also going to inspire people back home in Africa, in Nigeria, wherever these traditions are, to hold on to their traditions, because even back in Africa, in Nigeria, for example, I think it's 40% Christian among the Yoruba people, maybe 40% Muslim, and then the rest hold on to indigenous Ifa tradition. It's going to inspire other generations of young Africans to look to their own traditions and to see value in them. Why? Partly because they see the explosion of it outside of Africa, and then they realize that there must be some value in this. I remember once when I had a conversation with Omar Sosa, who, again, will be the composer for Across the Kings River, and he told me something to the effect that when he came to the United States from Cuba, and in a sense that's when he started to realize more the beauty of his own people and his own spiritual tradition, and he went back to move closer to it, but that was because he saw how it was growing here. And so, yes, the growth of these traditions here in the West and in other parts of the world, I know will inspire other generations back home in Africa. So there is some truth in that statement, and I do understand what they mean by that.
Ashe, ashe. And from the listening audience, we have a question about that. The question asks, do you believe that doing the producing of the documentary itself will have a particular ritualistic impact on our collective community, even on those who don't necessarily see the film from a spiritual perspective?
Yes, and the answer to that is yes. And the reason why I say that is because people write me all the time, and they tell me that this project is having an impact in their lives. It's in some way changing their lives. And that humbles me because I think, well, the film isn't done yet, and people are telling me that it's having such an impact on them. And to that, I would say, all praise to the ancestors. And to that, I would also say that in what each and every one of us, in what we're called to do, sometimes we become so goal-oriented. We think that we're at point A, and our goal, of course, is to get to point B and to accomplish whatever goal we set out. But sometimes what can happen along the way is you can have a tremendous impact long before you get to point B. So it's something to keep in mind, for example, as you work on your novel or any other project that you're working on. It's not just and only about getting to your goal. It's about what happens along the journey. And so each and every one of us, we can have tremendous impact, even if we don't always get, I'm sure with faith and determination, we'll get to where we're destined to go, of course. But we can have a tremendous impact. And even if we look at, for example, the life of Brother King, Martin Luther King, he had this, back when he gave that famous speech, he has this dream of X, Y, and Z. He might not get to the mountaintop, and he was cut down like Malcolm X was cut down, and so many of our other leaders were cut down. So even though he didn't get to the mountaintop, he had this tremendous impact. And so back to each and every one of us, we can have a tremendous impact too. And it's not always about, getting to where we want to go, but it's getting to where the divine forces need us to go and being willing to do that.
Ashe. Thanks for that wisdom, Baba. And that's particularly correct. I most humbly think our works live on beyond our physical body here in the plane. And it's excellent you pointed that out. I want to ask you this. Do you feel that, I know you have a background as a photographer, and I don't want to give too much of the story away, but just the clip. I wish we had the facility to show the clip to people, but could you tell us, because the clip explains how you found your way into Ifa, and after the death of your biological father and some situations with your son, could you give like a little overview of that clip for those who have not seen it yet, and that would be great so they can understand how you're approaching this project.
Oh, okay. Well, I would say two things. One of the reasons for my trip, or how it involved me taking my daughter to Africa, came after the death of my father, when I realized that his life is short. So the important things in life we almost do now. We can't just keep putting off writing that book, putting off writing that play, putting off, whether it's creating music that we've been dreaming of, whether it's opening a business, whatever it is that we feel is important in life, we have to take steps to do it now. So after my father died, I felt, hey, I need to go back to Africa, and I need to take my child to try and meet my godfather, the ORISHA, and some of the other elders there. So that inspired me to do that. As to how I got into the tradition on this level, it's the will of the ancestors. At one point, although I knew about Ifa and I knew about these traditions, at one point long ago I felt, I know about this and it's interesting, but it doesn't really have anything to do with me. It's not really my tradition. It's not really for me to walk this path. And what happened at one point was my eldest son, started getting into trouble with the law, getting arrested, things like that. When I say getting into trouble, I mean serious trouble, so much so that there was no peace in the house for a long time. And so during one night when he was giving us hell, I went to see a diviner, a Ifa diviner who was in town. And I went there because I wanted some insight into my son. But when I got there, the diviner gave me insight into myself, also. And he told me, hey, you're supposed to be on this path. This is your spiritual name. And he told me some things about my future. And that's when it all clicked. That's when it all resonated. And that's when I became serious about walking my path and doing, going down this road. And having said that, I would say that unless we as human people, human spirits, unless we tap into our own spirituality or our own spirits or the spirits of the higher forces, we won't be all that we could become in life. We won't be able to empower ourselves and we won't be able to empower others. I believe the spiritual world is where all of our best ideas come from, whether it's in the arts, whether it's in science, whether it's in healing. This is where it comes from. They have spiritual origins. And so to unlock our full potential, we have to become more spiritual.
Ashe. Baba, we know that your time is really limited, and we really want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us. We really appreciate it. Would you once again give us the contact information, because we have some questions that we frankly don't have time to ask you, and so people will know how to get to you?
Sure, okay. You can reach me at, again, acrossthekingsriver.com. That's www.acrossthekingsriver.com, or you can even call me at 510-388-500, and feel welcome to send me an email. I always write people back. It doesn't matter who writes me. I always whenever someone writes me, I always send them a personal response right back, because it's important to me to do that. So just always feel welcome to reach out, and you'll always hear from me.
Great. And can we have your phone number one more time, a little slower?
Sure. It's 510-388-5500.
5500. Yes, that's area code 510-388-5500, 5500. And this has been great. This has been most enlightening, and I can't wait to see what happens in the future with this project. I'm all on board. Before you go, just had the one last question. Is there something very pressing that we have not asked you about that you would like to make sure that the audience gets before you leave?
I would say, what I would say is to honor the visions that come to you, honor what you feel called to do, and don't think that what you feel called to do is small. Don't think that what you're called to do is insignificant. Know that if you're called to do something, you're called because it's very significant. And what I would say to you is that what you are being called to do is the answer to a question that someone else has. If you're called to do something, it's because it's part of a solution to someone else's problem or someone else's whatever it is that they're going through. And so that's why you must honor it, and in freeing them with your vision and what you're called to do, in many ways you'll end up freeing yourself also.
Baba James Weeks, producer of Across the King's River. Please check it out, and please check out his acrossthekingsriver.com website, where you can get more information. He can be reached at area code 510-510-388-5500. We want to thank you again, Baba, for coming and bringing the information and doing the works that you're doing. And
thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor to have me on your show, and I truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Ashe. And Odabo Baba. And when we return, we will be getting into the second half of the very successful Asafo Cultural Spotlight with Brother Ifawumi Oshundeli, talking about the Black Panther Party, Part 2. You don't want to miss it. So right on the other side of this. Sister, Bring us home.
Greetings, one and all, and thank you for listening to Anu Asafo this Sunday. I am now bringing you the Anu Nation announcements on this beautiful segment of Anu Asafo. We want to first thank you for tuning in once again and being a supporter and participant in this journey of the Asafo as dictated and governed by our ancestral call. We would also like to thank our Chief Jegna, Haru Yuya Asan Anu of the Anu Spiritual Order and Head Instructor of the Sedulu House Spiritual Center for his continued guidance and support. Look out for the new student forum that will be created on the seduluhouse.com website. That is SADULUHOUSE.com. This forum will be exclusive to the students of the Anu Spiritual Training Class Series. Chief Jegna Haru Yuya Asan Anu will also offer free as well as supplemental classes to registered students and the general public. Also, if you are an Mfundi and would like to participate on the Anu Asafo show, please respond to the link on the Anu Spiritual Training Facebook page or email omilade@seduluhouse.com. That is OMILADE@seduluhouse.com. Also, in other happenings, please check out the newest release from Anu Publishing, Natural Hair for Young Women, in which Felicia Terrell Anu discusses holistic approaches to natural hair care for young women. Natural hair care for young women can be found at anu-bookstore.com. That is ANU-BOOKSTORE.com. Also, look out for Anu Publishing's forthcoming book on shell readings, which will cover the Sacred 16 Major Odu and the casting of the Meriden Lagoon. As always, please make sure to tune in to Chief Jegna Haru Yuya Asan Anu during his Foundational Fridays broadcast, which airs at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on BlogTalk Radio. If you or someone you know has a background in spiritual sciences and is committed to bringing a broad spectrum of spiritual and metaphysical information to an international audience, please contact us at anunation.org. That is ANUNATION.org to become a co-host for the channel Enlightenment and Transformation. That concludes our announcements for this Sunday, and now back to Anu Asafo.
Ashe, Ashe. It's 2 minutes after the hour, and we're on the other side of our interview segment with Baba James Weeks, the producer of Across the King's River, and feeling good, feeling fine, and we are about to get into something even more interesting potentially, but maybe not, in a different way. Let's call it in a different way, because the film is fantastic. But Brother Ifawumi Oshundeli last week, he gave a fantastic part one to the Black Panther Party series, and we can't wait to part two. Brother Ifawumi.
Yes,
are you ready?
and Ashe.
Okay, it's all you.
All right. When we hear the names of Angela Davis, Ashata Shakur, Diane, where's Diane? It's right in my head here. But anyway, when we hear these ladies' names, we already know exactly what to expect. Angela Davis with a big afro, Ashata Shakur on the run. At its beginning, the Black Panther Party reclaimed black masculinity and traditional gender roles. Several scholars consider the party's stance of armed resistance highly masculine, with the use of guns and violence affirming proof of manhood. In 1968, the Black Panther Party newspaper stated in several articles that the role of female Panther was to stand behind black men and be supportive. By 1969, the Black Panther Party newspaper officially stated that men and women are equal, and instructed male Panthers to treat female party members as equals, a drastic change from the idea of the female Panther as subordinate. That same year, Deputy Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter conducted a meeting condemning sexism. After 1969, the party considered sexism counter-revolutionary. The Black Panther Party adopted a womanist ideology in consideration of the unique experiences of African American women, affirming that racism is more oppressive than sexism. Womanism was a mix of black nationalism and the vindication of women, putting race and community struggle before the gender issue. Womanism posited that traditional feminism failed to include race and class struggle in its denunciation of male sexism and was therefore part of white hegemony. In opposition to some feminists' view, womanism promoted a gender role point of view that men are not above women, but hold a different position in the home and the community. So men and women must work together for the preservation of African American culture and community. From this point forward, the Black Panther Party newspaper portrayed women as revolutionaries, using the example of party members such as Kathleen Cleaver, Angela Davis, and Erica Huggins, all political, intelligent, and attractive women. The Black Panther Party newspaper often showed women as active participants in the armed self-defense movement, picturing them with children and guns as protectors of the home, the family, and the community. This had direct implications at every level for Black Panther women. From 1968 to the end of its publication in 1982, the head editors of the Black Panther Party newspaper were all women. In 1970, approximately 40 to 70% of party members were women, and several chapters, like the Des Moines, Iowa, New Haven, Connecticut, were headed by women. During the 1970s, recognizing the limited access poor women had to abortion, the party officially supported women's reproductive rights, including abortion. That same year, the party condemned and opposed prostitution. The Black Panther Party experienced significant problems in several chapters with sexism and gender oppression, particularly in the Oakland chapter, where cases of sexual harassment and gender division were common. When Oakland Panthers arrived to bolster the New York City Panther chapter after New York 21 leaders were incarcerated, they displayed such chauvinistic attitude toward New York Panther women that they had to be fended off at gunpoint. Some party leaders thought the fight for gender equality was a threat to men and a distraction from the struggle for racial equality. In response, the Chicago and New York chapters, among others, established equal gender rights as a priority and tried to eradicate sexist attitudes. By the time the Black Panther Party disbanded, official policy was to reprimand men who violated the rules of gender equality. The murder of Betty Van Patter. Black Panther bookkeeper Betty Van Patter was murdered in 1974. Although this crime was never solved, the Panthers, according to the magazine Mother Jones, were almost universally believed to be responsible. David Horowitz became certain that Black Panther members were responsible and denounced the Panthers. When Huey Newton was shot dead 15 years later, Horowitz characterized Newton as the killer of Betty Van Patter. When Art Goldberg, a former colleague at Rampers, alleged that Horowitz himself was responsible for the death of Van Patter by recommending her for the position of Black Panther accountant. Horowitz counter-alleged that the Panthers had killed more than a dozen people in the course of conducting extortion, prostitution, and drug rackets in the Oakland ghetto. He said further that the organization was committed to doctrines that are false and to causes that are demonstrably wrong-headed and even evil. Former chairperson Elaine Brown also questioned Horowitz's motives and recommended Van Patter to the Panthers. She suspected espionage. Horowitz later became known for his conservative viewpoints and opposition to leftist thought. Let us further explore key female players in the Black Panther Party. Writer, activist, and educator Angela Davis, who hailed from Birmingham, Alabama, is best known as a radical African-American educator and activist for civil rights and other social issues. She knew about racial prejudice from her experiences with discrimination growing up in Alabama. As a teenager, Davis organized interracial study groups, which were broken up by the police. She also knew several of the young African-American girls killed in the Birmingham church bombing of 1963. Davis later moved north and went to Brandeis University in Massachusetts, where she studied philosophy with Herbert Marcuse. And he was a German-born American philosopher of Marxist and Freudian theories of Western society. As a graduate student at the University of California at San Diego in the late 1960s, Davis joined several groups, including the Black Panthers, but she spent most of her time working with the Che Lumumba Club, which was a black branch of the Communist Party. Hired to teach at the University of California, Los Angeles, or UCLA, Davis ran into trouble with the school administration because of her association with communism. They fired her, but she fought them in court and got a job back. Outside of academia, Davis had become a strong supporter of 3 prison inmates of the Soledad prisons, known as the Soledad Brothers. The brothers were not related. These 3 men, John Clutchett, Fleta Drumgo, and George Lester Jackson, were accused of killing a prison guard after several African-American inmates had been killed in a fight by the guard. Some thought these prisoners were being used as scapegoats because of her political work within the prison. During Jackson's trial in August of 1970, an escape attempt was made and several people in the courtroom were killed. Davis was brought up on several charges, including murder, for her alleged part in the event. There were 2 main pieces of evidence used at trial. The guns used were registered to her, and she was reported in love with Jackson. Angela Davis was the 3rd woman ever placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. After spending roughly 18 months in jail, Davis was acquitted in June 1970. She entered the political arena by running for vice president on the Community Party ticket in 1980 and 1984. Today, she is professor at the University of California, Santa Cruz, where she teaches courses on the history of consciousness. Davis is the author of several books, including Women, Race, and Class, produced in 1980, Are Prisons Obsolete in 2003, and her most recent national lecture titled The Prison Industrial Complex, where she exposed the way in which prisons rely on and enforce race, class, and gender oppression. Another warrior within the Black Panther Party is Assata Olubala Shakur, and she was born in Jamaica, Queens, New York City. After graduation from the City College of New York at 23, Shakur became involved in the Black Panther Party, eventually becoming a leading member of the Harlem branch. Prior to joining the Black Panther Party, Shakur had met several of its members on a 1970 trip to Oakland, California. One of Shakur's main activities with the Panthers was coordinating a school breakfast program. However, she soon left the party, charging macho behavior of males in the organization, but did not go as far as other female Panthers like Regina Jennings, who left the organization over sexual harassment. Instead, Shakur's main criticism of the Black Panther Party was its alleged lack of focus on black history. And this is her quote, "The basic problem stemmed from the fact that the Black Panther Party had no systematic approach to political education. They were reading the Red Book, but didn't know who Harriet Tubman, Marcus Garvey, and Nat Turner were. They talked about intercommunalism, but still really believed that the Civil War was fought to free the slaves. A whole lot of them barely understood any kind of history, black, African, or otherwise. That was the main reason many party members, in my opinion, underestimated the need to unite with other black organizations and to struggle around various community issues, unquote. That same year, Asafo joined the Black Liberation Army, which was a radical and violent organization of black activists whose primary objective was to fight for independence and self-determination of African people in the United States. In 1971, Shakur joined the Republic of New Africa, which is an organization formed to create an independent black majority nation composed of South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. In 1972, Shakur was the subject of a nationwide manhunt after the FBI alleged that she was the revolutionary mother hen of a Black Liberation Army cell that had conducted a series of cold-blooded murders of New York City police officers, including the execution-style murders of New York police officers Joseph Piagentini and Waverly Jones on May 21, 1971, and Gregory Foster and Rocco Laurie on January 28, 1972. Shakur was alleged to have been directly involved with the Foster and Laurie murders and involved with the Piagentini and Jones murders. Some sources go further, identify Shakur as a de facto leader and the soul of the Black Liberation Army after the arrest of co-founder Doroba Moore. Robert Daley, Deputy Commissioner of the New York City Police Department, for example, described Shakur as the final wanted fugitive, the soul of the gang, the mother hen who kept them together, kept them moving, kept them shooting. Asafo Shakur was involved in several shootouts with law enforcement. Most notable shootout occurred on the New Jersey Turnpike in East Brunswick, where Ashata was wounded, and her husband was killed, and a state trooper was shot twice in the head with his own gun. At the time of the shootout, Asafo Shakur was a member of the Black Liberation Army and no longer a member of the Black Panther Party. Between 1973 and 1977, in New York and New Jersey, Shakur was indicted 10 times, resulting in 7 different criminal trials. Shakur was charged with 2 bank robberies, the kidnapping of a Brooklyn heroin dealer, attempted murder of 2 Queens police officers stemming from a January 23, 1973 failed ambush, and 8 other felonies related to the Turnpike shootout. Of these trials, 3 resulted in acquittals, 1 in a hung jury, 1 in a change of venue, 1 in mistrial due to pregnancy, and 1 in conviction. 3 indictments were dismissed without trials. In the history of New Jersey, no woman pretrial detainee or prisoner has ever been treated as Asafo was, continuously confined in a men's prison under 24-hour surveillance of her most intimate functions, without intellectual sustenance, adequate medical attention, exercise, and without the company of other women for all the years she was in custody. Shakur was identified as a political prisoner as early as October 8, 1973, by Angela Davis. The United Nations Commission on Human Rights concluded in 1979 that her treatment was totally unbefitting of any prisoner. Their investigation, which focused on alleged human rights abuses of political prisoners, cited Shakur as one of the worst cases of such abuses, and including her in a class of victims of FBI misconduct through the COINTELPRO strategy and other forms of illegal government conduct, who as political actors have been selectively targeted for provocation, false arrest, entrapment, fabrication of evidence, and spurious criminal persecutions. On November 7, 1979, she escaped the Clinton Correctional Facility for Women in New Jersey, when 3 members of the Black Liberation Army visited her, drew concealed .45 caliber pistols, seized 2 guards as hostages, and commandeered a prison van. The van escaped through an unfenced section of the prison into the parking lot of a state school for the handicapped, 1.5 miles away. Blue and white Lincoln and a blue Mercury Comet were waiting. No one was injured during the prison break, including the guards turned hostages who were left in the parking lot. After her escape, Shakur lived as a fugitive for several years. The FBI circulated wanted posters throughout New York, New Jersey area. Her supporters hung Assata Shakur is welcome here posters in response. For years after Shakur's escape, the movements, activities, and phone calls of her friends and relatives, including her daughter, walking to school in Upper Manhattan, were monitored by investigators in an attempt to ascertain her whereabouts. Shakur fled to the island nation of Cuba by 1984. In that year, she was granted political asylum in that country. The Cuban government used approximately $13 a day toward her living expenses. The following year, she got the opportunity to reunite with her daughter, who had been raised by her mother. She published her first book, Assata, an autobiography, which was written in Cuba in 1987. Her autobiography has been cited in relation to critical legal studies and critical race theory. The book does not give a detailed account of the events on the New Jersey Turnpike, except saying that the jury convicted a woman with her hands up. The book was published by Lawrence Hill and Company in the United States and Canada, but the copyright is held by Zed Book, Ltd. Of London, due to Son of Sam laws, which restricts who can receive profits from a book. In 1993, she published a second book, Still Black, Still Strong, with Doroba bin Wahid and Mumia Abu Jamal. Shakur writing have been widely circulated on the Internet. For example, the largely Internet-based Hands Off Assata campaign is coordinated by Chicago area Black Radical Congress activists. As early as 1998, Shakur has referred to herself as a 20th century escaped slave. In the same open letter, Shakur calls Cuba one of the largest, most resistant, and most courageous maroon camps that has ever existed on the face of the planet. Shakur is also known to have worked as an English language editor for the Radio Havana, Cuba. On May 2nd, 2005, the 32nd anniversary of the Turnpike shooting, the FBI classified her as a domestic terrorist, increasing the reward for assistance in her capture to $1 million, the largest reward placed on an individual in the history of New Jersey, New York City, and in New York City. New York City Councilman Charles Barron, a former Black Panther, has called for the bond to be rescinded. Assata Shakur dropped out of sight in Cuba, where she had grown accustomed to living her life openly, even having a public listed telephone number. In 2013, the FBI announced it had made Shakur the first woman on this list of most wanted terrorists. The reward for her capture and return was also doubled to $2 million this year. She has been on the run for over 35 years. Run, Assata, run. The last sister in the struggle that I like to explore is Elaine Brown. Elaine Brown grew up in the ghetto of North Philadelphia with a single working mother, Dorothy Brown, and an absent father. Despite desperate poverty, she studied classical piano and ballet for many years in her youth at predominantly white experimental elementary school. As a young woman, Elaine had few African-American friends but spent most of her time with her white friends. After graduating from Philadelphia High School for Girls, a public preparatory school for gifted young women, she studied at Temple University for less than a semester. After withdrawing from Temple, Brown moved to Los Angeles, California to try being a professional songwriter. While in Los Angeles, Brown enrolled in the University of California, Los Angeles in September 1968. Upon arriving in California with little money and few contacts, Brown got work as a cocktail waitress at the strip club. While working at the strip club, she met Jay Kennedy, a married white fiction writer, and the two became lovers. Kennedy was the first person to politicize and radicalize Brown. Because of the thorough education on the civil rights movement, capitalism, and communism that Kennedy gave to her, Brown became involved with the Black Liberation Movement. Soon the pair parted ways. and Brown's involvement in politics grew, and she began working for the radical newspaper Harambee. In April 1968, after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., she attended her first meeting of the Los Angeles chapter of the Black Panther Party. She joined as a rank-and-file member, studying revolutionary literature, selling Black Panther Party newspapers, and cleaning guns, among other tasks. She soon helped the party set up its first free breakfast for children program in Los Angeles, as well as the party's initial free busing to prison program and free legal aid program. As part of a directive by Black Panther Party leader Huey Newton, Brown unsuccessfully ran for the Oakland City Council in 1973, getting 30% of the vote. She ran again in 1975, losing again with 44% of the vote. When Newton fled to Cuba in 1974 in the face of murder charges, he appointed Elaine Brown to lead the party. The first woman to do so, Elaine Brown chaired the Black Panther Party from 1974 until 1977. In her 1992 memoir, A Taste of Power, she wrote about the experience. Quote, "A woman in the Black Power movement was considered at best irrelevant. A woman asserting herself was a pariah. If a woman assumed a role of leadership, she was said to be eroding black manhood, to be hindering the progress of the black race. She was an enemy of the black people. I knew I had to muster something mighty to manage the Black Panther Party," end quote. During Brown's leadership of the Black Panther Party, she focused on electoral politics and community service. In 1977, she managed Lionel Wilson's victorious campaign to become Oakland's first black mayor. Also, Brown developed the Panthers Liberation School, which was recognized by the state of California as a model school. Elaine's enemies had to latch onto the belief that Elaine was a man-hating feminist very soon after she came into power, as she elevated men and women up in the ranks. These voices were easily silenced by Elaine early on, but the resentment stayed underneath the surface party, only to break out with the return of Huey Newton. The return of the boss meant the comrades no longer had to answer to Elaine Brown, and Huey did not feel the strength to deny their expectation and reprimand the men when they did wrong. Brown stepped down from chairing the Black Panther Party less than a year after Newton's return from Cuba in 1977, when Newton authorized the beating of Regina Davis, the administrator of the Panther Liberation School. This incident was the point at which Brown could no longer tolerate the sexism and patriarchy of the Black Panther Party. Huey suggested a central committee meeting to discuss this problem, but Elaine believed the men would turn on her very quickly. Elaine took her daughter Erica Brown and left the Black Panther Party quickly, suddenly, and without a word to Huey. They fled to France. Brown eventually returned to civil rights struggle, focusing on the need for radical prison reform. From 1980 to 1983, she attended Southwestern University School of Law in Los Angeles. In 1996, Brown moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and founded Fields of Flowers, Inc., a nonprofit organization committed to providing educational opportunities for impoverished African-American children. In 1998, Brown co-founded the grassroots group Mothers Advocating Juvenile Justice to advocate for children being prosecuted as adults in the state of Georgia. In 2003, Brown helped co-found the National Alliance for Radical Prison Reform, which helped thousands of prisoners find housing after they were released on parole. It facilitated transportation for the family visiting the prison. It helped the prison find employment, and it raised money for the prison phone calls and gifts. Brown has continued her prison reform. She has continued that by advocating in her lectures at colleges and universities in the United States. She left the United States with her daughter Erica and entered psychotherapy to end her addiction to Thorazine. Brown recorded 2 albums, Seize the Time and Until We're Free, on a Motown label, and the album Seize the Time includes The Meeting. the national anthem of the Black Panther Party. 3 soldiers, 3 warriors, 3 women in the trenches in the struggle in the Black Panther Party. Elaine Brown, Assata Shakur, and Angela Davis.
If you would be interested in having Chief Jugna Haru Yuya Asan Anu facilitate readings, classes, or a workshop in your area, please join us at www.meetup.com/Africa-Spirit-Workers and suggest a meetup in your area for others to attend. If you desire for Chief Jugna Haru Yuya Asan Anu to personally facilitate your meetup, he is willing to do that free of charge. However, there will be a small shrine donation suggested to cover his time and travel. Once again, check out www.meetup.com/Africa-Spirit-Workers for more details. And now back to our segment.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Yeah, it's 31 minutes after the hour, and wow. Wow. You're with the Anu Asafo show, where Pan-Africanism meets African traditional spirituality, with brothers Ifawumi Oshundele and me, Brother Wole Mango Ifa, and Odukweo, Brother Fa. That was incredible. Thank you so much. We all thank you.
Yes, I condensed as much as I could, but it's a very, very, just a research on the Black Panther Party. You will find so much information.
Yes, that is true, especially over these years. A lot of people have talked about what they've experienced in books, and some of them have remembered things that they didn't remember before.
Yes.
But Brother Ifawumi Oshundele, you're truly a teacher, and we are definitely better positioned to engage this subject about this seminal group, who's played a pivotal role in our recent history after your Part 1 and Part 2, cultural spotlight on the subject. But here's the thing that's so incredible. It seems like Part 2, the sisters' experience, seemed to be so much more fiery and adventurous than that of the brothers in Part 1.
What is hidden in the history of the Black Panther Party is just how tough and tenacious these women were. There has never been any organization ever in the New World, United States, where women put their hands on weapons and pull the trigger.
Go ahead.
Angela Davis with that big, large afro and growing up in the hood at that time. That was a part of history and time was when you had that I'm black and I'm proud, you just weren't taking it anymore. Although right now, with the black community being so narcotic with drugs and crime and all of this, it was a feeling in the community. I'm not taking this anymore. We're going out. No, we're not going to have it. And that afro just gave you a solidarity. Nowadays, we take our symbols, and our symbols no longer have that same meaning. The afro has come back, but it does not have the politics with it. It doesn't have the liberation with it. It's a fad. It's fashion. Just like with Malcolm X, when this movie came out, and the X-Caps, well, the X-Caps was worn and popularized by people who stood for nothing Malcolm stood for. Yeah, guys out there standing on the corner selling crack with an X-Cap on. So these emblems, these symbols mean something back then. But to see these same symbols, now it makes you reflect, but it does not have the same feel. Although I overstand about evolution of our people since the late 1960s, early 70s. But it's the symbols no longer have the meaning.
Ashe. And speaking of Brother Malcolm, as Louis Farrakhan delivers the Nation of Islam into the hands of the racist Scientologist organization for what appears to be a few pennies on the dollar, the real black hero of the day finally speaks unfiltered. And I'm talking about the new diary that's being produced by Third World Press on Brother Malcolm, called Malcolm Fights Back, the Diary of Malcolm X. Now, that came out on the 14th of this month, and there are special opportunities involved with it. I hate to digress, but I just want to make sure people know that they can buy the $39 book, or they can make contributions, get the book, get hardback autographed books. One of Malcolm's daughters is involved with the editing of this, along with the most esteemed Herbert Boyd. And again, it's being produced by Third World Press, the Chicago-based African-American publishing company led by Hakeem Matabuti. And so you please be aware of that. But getting back to the subject at hand, Bro Fi, you are totally right. The Afro, and in particular Sister Angela Davis, defined a generation by the symbolism of their return to the natural hair, the Black Power symbol, what they were trying to do. And it's amazing how much more we've learned about our ancestral culture since the 60s and 70s movement, in which, like you said, they didn't know about many of the African-American historical people that tossed around all the time today. Now we're blessed to have African traditional spiritualism, the Akan system, the Ifa system, and a lot of systems, the Congo, Kikongo system. We are into the Kemetic knowledge about the African origins of the Kemetic culture. This is now commonplace, when only a few decades ago, this was all considered controversial information. So, Brafa, you really added to the information we have today by looking back on yesterday, and it is very interesting that the sisters, talking about issues of sexism and things of that nature, the way that the role of the sister was looked at back only a few decades ago compared to what is going on now with their place in society and their striving for higher and better things. So that's movement. And I hope the sisters appreciate that they are moving forward, and brothers are evolving in their views of themselves and the role of the sisters. Please.
I see right now that the next movement, the next Sergeant movement that we have in this country will be led and headed by women.
I believe you are certainly correct about that, brother.
It will be led by women. You can hear from Brother Ifawumi Oshundele telling you today and now it will be led by women.
And, even more than that, looking back on part 2 of this cultural spotlight that you just dropped on us, the things that the sisters have been put through. When you talk about Asata Shakur, her treatment in jail. When you talk about the things Angela Davis went through, talking about intellectual freedom in the academy, they attempted to fire her for just her opinion, just her intellectual ideas. What Elaine Brown did as leader of the party, she streamed the party. She brought the party into politics, and in a successful way. So the sisters didn't just occupy space or were there in an acting leadership position. They actually led and they achieved what some would say a lot more than the brothers did. So it's time to look at female leadership in a different light.
They are battle tested. They are battle tested. These women, after the research that I've done, these are some seriously battle tested women.
Ashe. And speaking of battle tested, Sister Asante Shakur is still, she is doing what this show is trying to do, bring Pan-Africanism into African traditional spirituality. She has quite a web presence coming out of Cuba, and she is a practitioner of the Ifa tradition, and she blends that with her Pan-African political ideologies, and it's quite impressive. In fact, she did a book review of one of the books of one of our prior guests, Baba Baruti, Baba Molinmu Bumwani Baruti, and it was one of the better book reviews that I have found on his work. So we want to say a shout out to Sister Asante Shakur and let her know, look, she is not forgotten, and there's a whole new generation learning about her. So, yeah. There's a lot for us to scratch our heads about, be somewhat pessimistic about, but there is a lot more for us to be inspirational about. We're not doing that badly. We're just been made to believe that we are doing so badly. Actually, we are on the cusp of making a big change. And you can see that by the constant brainwashing that's pushed by the majority. They wouldn't be doing all that if they weren't afraid of what would happen if they didn't continually brainwash us. So if we decide to take a few steps into consciousness, I think you'll be disturbing the whole thing, the whole apple bat, the whole bunch of apples. What do you say about that, Brother Fa?
Ashe, and you are so correct. I concur. It's fear. It's fear. Everything that's done against you is fear. And sometimes some people have a right to fear. If you can think you can put your foot on somebody's neck and continue to keep your foot on somebody's neck, you're fearful. If you take your foot off of there, they spring up because it might expose your complete weakness. So they have a right to be fearful.
Ashe. And we just heard back from Baba James Weeks. He sent us a text. He's doing well. He had to leave because he had another engagement, but he reached back to thank us again, and we want to let everybody know that we are very happy and very thankful for the job he did. And again, we want to give you his contact information. He is James Weeks, Baba James Weeks. He can be contacted at acrossthekingsriver.com, and his direct telephone number is area code 510, that's 510-388-5500. So that's area code 510-388-5500. And please go and reach out to him to learn more about the project he's working on, the great documentary Across the Kings River, and also for readings and spiritual consultations. This soft-spoken but very spiritual and sincere brother and Baba is there for you, and you can contact him directly. And it was a great experience talking to him on the air.
Yes, indeed it was. Yes, indeed, it was a great experience talking to him, and I learned a lot. Just for that time that we had spoken with him, I learned a lot. Ashe.
And we also want to remind you that the war is on. Baba Mwalimu Bomani Barudi has told us. Brothers Oba Anpu and Brother Kwaisi Ra Pata have told us. Yes, and Sister Nikki Love of the Nikki Love BlogTalk radio show just last week, she pulled our coats and told us. So if you don't know, now you do. So, and we're not just going to leave you out there, with that information. We want you to also remember to keep your eyes open on the Sister Anisha McBride cold-blooded murder case. Keep her and her family in your thoughts and in your energy. And remember to keep the need for us to make change in our consumer behaviors by buying black, by being conscious of the money that we spend and where we spend it, makes all the difference in the world. We want to remind you about the Sapelo Island situation that is ongoing and the need for you to sign the Sapelo Island petition. And don't wait for it. Don't wait for it to find you. You go find it. Okay? And now, like we said, we don't want to just tell you the war is on and just leave it at that. We want to help you prepare for it. And now, in that frame of mind, we want to let you know about our guest next week, the famed healer and herbalist, Dr. Layla Africa. Yes, Dr. Africa will be here. He'll be here telling us about his newest book, which is the follow-up to his hugely successful book, The African Holistic Health, and which first came out in 1988 and has gone through at least 5 different new editions. I think the last one was in 2008, but I'm not sure, so I won't say it. Oops. But, yes, we want you to know that you definitely don't want to miss our show next week because Dr. Africa will be getting us in touch. He has a workbook coming out. And this workbook it's the next step from his African Holistic Health book. It tells you it gives you a number of different ways in which you can chart your own spiritual health, find out what you need to do, how and where you need to focus your concentration. And he'll be here giving us all of that information up close and personal. I can't wait. So we invite you to join us each Sunday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, Eastern Standard Time, 12 o'clock noon Central Standard Time, and 10 o'clock, of course, Pacific Standard Time for another installment of the Anu Asafo Show. Brother Ifawumi.
Yes.
Do you have any closing remarks before we take it into the close?
No, I just want to remind our radio listening audience with the child who is missing out in New York, who also has a disability, who's missing, no one can find him. Send some prayers, send some lights out into the universe for this boy that he's fine and everything for his health, and that he's found.
Ashe.
And please don't forget to sign the petition. The petition is very, very important. Sign the petition or just go Google Sapelo Island petition, and you will get several that you can sign and also share with your friends on social network and family.
Ashe. Yes, please do. And last week we were just talking about the outrageous McBride case. This week there's been an arrest. Multiple charges are filed against this murderer, and you see how things can change week to week if we put forth a positive mind and a focused energy. So we want to remind you about that. So for our esteemed Chief Jegna, Haru Yuya Asananu, the entire Anu Nation and spiritual order, and of course the staff of the Anu Asafo show, Sister Omilade Anu, Brother Ifa Wumi Oshundeli, and me, Brother Wole Mango Ifa, we want to definitely thank you for your attendance this week and ask you to definitely come back next week, check us out, and every week after that for our special guest next week, Dr. Africa. This has been another Anu Asafo show where Pan-Africanism meets African spirituality. And so until next week, Odabo.
Odabo.
We thank you for your listening support and urge you to become an active participating member. For all those listening, if you'd like to gain a clearer and fundamental understanding of the Anu Order, be sure to pick up the book, Grasping the Root of Divine Power. To find out how you can become a student and member of the Anu Spiritual Order, please visit us at saduluhouse.com. That is SADULUHOUSE.com. Also, if you would like spiritual readings and assistance in your life as it pertains to your spiritual well-being and your divine purpose, please use the contact and scheduling forms to schedule a consultation with our Chief Jugna, Haru Yuya Asan Anu. Those forms are located at ORISHAreligion.com. That is ORISHAreligion.com, as well as are at saduluhouse.com. Also, sign up for the Anu newsletter for the latest happenings in the Anu community. The newsletter can be found by going to anunation.org. That is ANUNATION.org. If you'd like to become an on-air guest or sponsor on Anu Asafo or any of our other broadcasts, please be sure to contact us at questions@anunation.org. That is the word questions@anunation.org. Thank you for your continued support and be well.